might be the one for me, I changed my mind at one time to him, cause he you touch your back the shit on me with all them petty friends. RB2, they try to take down what the streets created. I'm just saying they ain't business shit for you to take it. I'm just saying they ain't business shit for you to take it. My chopper do push up, these foreigners do donuts. She want my money and I really wanna. Rush me the wrong way, leave you in a coma. They want the credit for gold that I conquered. They want the credit for gold that I conquered. They want the credit for all my conquered. They want the credit for shit that I conquered. I'm sitting but staying focused. He blow with my eyes open. I'm living but dying slowly. I'm hoping these devils joking me lead as I'm blindfolded. No knowledge on where I'm going. Shit that they got me on. I'm alive through the day. You come around and say you love me and what y'all again. I took out my mama tears and turned it to a dance. So tell me, okay, but I believe one day that ain't good, that ain't good. I recall the time that I prayed. I told God to remove all my friends. That ain't good, that ain't good. For me, accessibility. I don't even know if that's a word, but you know what I'm getting at.
I want them equal highs. I do it from enough to pull back to the fair value gap. The inverted fair value gap, one of the two. Then we can buy on the flip. We also have our new day opening gap above price. So all that plays a factor. But what we could do is we could run out the equal highs and keep crashing. But the thing is, if we run out equal highs, we form a DR, but we run the liquidity. So we're going to need some type of setup to go long. Chill out. Alright, y'all. Okay. So we traded into this lower one. Now it's this one that's left. Alright, let's see if we can get a flip. Alright. Come on.
Order filled.
Come on, man. Come on.
Stop filled.
If you start pushing up again, I'm gonna go in for longs. I do like those equal highs, man. If they would have tapped into the 915, I would have gone break even. We run out the first 5 minute low. I didn't see start speeds. It still just crashed. Traded into the firewall gap and crashed. Close below. Okay. Okay.
to Mexican guy say that's real. The also Tesla Pro. Bro, every time this guy was talking in the market. If Mexican guy replied me before this guy replied me today, I took Tesla Pro yesterday when we were going to work out.
Since yesterday.
Since yesterday. Before she replied, I was like, after we were already driving back, we said, I was just getting off work. I said, no problem. He didn't reply me until like 9. After I said, okay, give me half.
I got to just plan ahead. Just, tomorrow this time.
Yeah, I just go to sleep. I go to sleep. I don't tell her, can you deliver this morning? He say, if you pay, if you deliver it. I can't reply. The stock has been better lately, so.
That's right, last thing.
It's not that. No.
You're gonna get 15.
Are you ready to take full control of your life by mastering your emotions? In this powerful audiobook, Emotional Control for Life Mastery, you'll discover the secrets to staying calm under pressure, making better decisions, and building unshakable resilience. Across 10 life-changing chapters, you'll learn how to master your emotions, spot and understand triggers, break negative patterns, harness emotional intelligence, and stay composed in high-stakes moments. Every chapter is packed with practical strategies, real-life examples, and actionable practices that you can apply immediately to transform your daily life. This video is completely ad-free, so you can focus fully on learning without interruption. Subscribe now and join our daily audio chapter life. Start your transformation today. Don't miss a single chapter. Chapter 1. Master your emotions. Master your entire life. Mastering emotions is not a soft skill or a luxury reserved for saints. It is the central craft of a life lived with purpose. Emotions arrive like weather, sudden, loud, sometimes violent, but weather does not decide the course of a ship. The helmsman does. When a tight knot appears behind the breastbone, when heat flushes the face and thoughts sprint toward worst-case outcomes, a single measured set of actions can change the day, the week, and cumulatively the life. This chapter gives clear tools to turn those first moments of inner turbulence into a disciplined practice of clarity and control. The aim is not to erase feeling, that would be inhuman, but to choose response over reaction and direction over drift. Begin with the simple truth. Emotions are signals, not orders. Anger is information about a boundary perceived to be crossed. Fear signals value and an anticipation of loss. Shame points to a mismatch between an action and personal standards, perceived to be crossed. Anger is information about a boundary perceived to be crossed. Fear signals value and an anticipation of loss. Shame points to a mismatch between an action and personal standards. Treat each emotion as a messenger. Hear it, examine its origin, and decide whether obeying its first impulse will move life forward. A practical routine to start practicing this perspective is a 3-step pause, notice, name and choose. When tension spikes,
We want to serve.
stop for 3 slow breaths. Silently name the primary feeling, anger, fear, hurt, and ask a single question. What choice serves the person I want to become? That question alone introduces the gap between instinct and intention. Physical anchors transform abstract control into something the body can hold. When anxiety rises, the body often tightens first. Use a grounding checklist that is fast and physical. Plant feet flat, feel weight on the chair, press fingertips together, and breathe out for a count longer than the inhale. A breathing routine that is immediate and practical. Inhale for 4, hold for 2, exhale for 6. Do this 3 times before speaking or taking action. It slows the heartbeat, reduces the flood of adrenaline, and creates a space where reason can reassert itself. Practice this breathing twice daily for 2 minutes to make it automatic under stress. Name the triggers before they name you. A trigger is any situation, person, or thought that reliably produces an outsized emotional response. Keep a simple log for 2 weeks. Whenever a strong emotion appears, jot 1 line, date, situation, immediate thought, and physical sensation. Patterns emerge quickly. Maybe traffic always escalates irritation to rage, or critical emails spiral into self-doubt. Once the pattern is visible, design a counterplan. For traffic, create a short audio ritual, 3 songs that reset mood, or a deliberate 5-minute breathing window before entering the car. For critical emails, craft a buffer, read, close the message, do a 2-minute breathing reset, then respond. Control begins long before a crisis. It begins in those predictable pockets of life. Reframing is the mental skill of changing the story that fuels emotion. Stories are powerful, but often inaccurate. The same event can produce pride, shame, or curiosity depending on the narrative chosen. Practice the 3-question reframe. What is the fact? What story am I telling about it? What is a more useful story? For example, a missed deadline is the fact. The catastrophic story might be, I am incompetent. A useful story could be, this is a signal that processes need improvement. Fixable. Reframing doesn't ignore consequences. It changes the motive force from self-condemnation to effective action. Stoic discipline focuses on distinguishing what is within control and what is not. This is not passive acceptance, but high agency. Write 2 lists. Things in direct control and things not in your control. Place thoughts, judgments, and actions squarely in the first column, other people's reactions, weather, past events in the second. Use these lists when overwhelmed. If an item belongs to the first column, act. If it belongs to the second, practice a brief ritual. Breathe, say a short phrase, such as not mine to steer, and redirect energy to the first column. This repeated triage sharpens attention and reduces energy wasted on futile mental efforts. A daily emotional maintenance routine keeps the system resilient. Begin each morning with a 3-minute clarity practice. Sit, breathe, and silently state 3 commitments for the day in action language. Small, observable things like I will pause before answering feedback, not vague ideals. Midday, perform a 1-minute body scan, shoulders, jaw, chest, stomach, release anything tense. Before sleep, write 3 short entries in a journal, 1 lesson learned about feelings, 1 victory for emotional control, and 1 micro plan to improve. This simplicity prevents theory from stacking up and turns mastery into muscle memory. Language shapes feeling. Replace explosive phrases with calibrated ones. Rather than this is unbearable, practice this is difficult right now. Instead of they always do this, try this is repeated, and I can respond differently. Language narrows or widens the emotional aperture. Practicing precise language tames emotional hyperbole and invites problem solving. Expose oneself strategically to small emotional challenges to build tolerance. This is emotional resistance training. If avoiding confrontation feels automatic, set a manageable goal. Have one honest 30-second conversation about a small boundary this week. If rejection is feared, aim to ask a modest request that might be declined. The goal is not to court suffering, but to expand the threshold for discomfort so that larger tests become manageable. Each small success rewrites expectation and increases confidence in handling real pressure. Relationships are the most consequential arena for emotional mastery. Empathy without boundaries leads to depletion. Boundaries without empathy lead to isolation.
You want to start
Practice a
from English
balanced
profile, then
script
you
for
put
difficult
it.
conversations.
First
1.
5 minutes.
State observation. When X happened. 2. Express internal experience. I felt Y. 3. Request change. Would you be willing to try Z? This script keeps the tone grounded and avoids escalation. If the other person reacts strongly, return to breathing and the simple question, what choice serves the person I want to be? Speak with calmness and clarity rather than reacting to provocation. When emotions surge in high-stakes moments, a brief tactical set of actions restores control quickly. Use the stop method. S. Stop movement or speech. T. Take 3 deep breaths. O. Observe where the emotion lives in the body. P. Proceed with a chosen response, not an impulse. This method gives the brain micro-time to switch from emotional autopilot to deliberate action. Train with it. Use it in small moments first. A minor irritation in line, a small criticism. Muscle memory grows when practiced in low stakes and holds when stakes rise. Self-compassion and ruthless accountability are not opposites. They are partners in durable change. When an emotional slip occurs, apply a short formula, own the fact in 1 sentence, extract 1 learning, and set 1 corrective action. For example, I raised my voice during the meeting. Next time, I will stand and breathe for 30 seconds before responding. This prevents the spiral of shame and turns mistakes into improvements.
Nice week.
Finally, commit to a long view. Emotional control is not a one-time victory, but a lifelong craft. Progress will be jagged. There will be days of clear command and nights when anger or fear feels like a tidal wave. The important measure is return, how quickly the system recovers, and what steps are taken next. Keep a simple progress log, 1 sentence on wins, 1 on lessons, once weekly. Over months, this log becomes an archive of growth and a source of confidence. Action steps to apply today. First, practice the breathing routine. Inhale 4, hold 2, exhale 6, 3 times at the first sign of stress. Second, start a trigger log and record 4 instances over the next week. Third, choose 1 predictable trigger and design a 2-step counter plan to use whenever it appears. Fourth, speak in the relationship script once this week. Observation, feeling, request. Small consistent acts compound into a temperament that is calm by default rather than crisis-driven. Emotional control frees energy for meaningful action. When the inner climate is managed, attention is available to build skill, to grow relationships, and to pursue projects that matter. The goal is not to become a detached machine, but a person who feels deeply and chooses wisely. Temperament, like muscle, answers to steady training. Begin with these practices, measure progress simply, and keep the aim clear. To live with integrity, to respond rather than react, and to steer life toward whatever is chosen as valuable. Week by week, these disciplined choices create a life shaped less by impulsive weather and more by steady direction. Chapter 2. Spotting and understanding your emotional triggers. Every strong life
Like a pull back
begins
before taking
with
the
one
title.
honest map,
And let's
knowing
close
where
the point.
emotional lightning strikes. Awareness is not a soft luxury, it is a survival tool and a platform for transformation. Emotions erupt for reasons that are often older than the moment they appear. A simple comment becomes a detonator because a past wound, an unmet need, or an old belief still lives under the surface. The first work is not to punish the feeling, but to record it without judgment, to become a careful cartographer of inner weather. Start by observing without commentary. When something moves you, irritation, sudden shame, a tightness in the throat, pause your narrative engine. Notice the physical facts, the tempo of your breath, heat at the cheeks, a clench in the jaw, a hollow at the base of the skull. These are objective markers that can be described without moralizing. Naming sensations in concrete physical terms reduces the pull of reactive language. Saying jaw tight or stomach dropping shifts the mind from storytelling into clear perception. The momentary skill of precise observation is the doorway to control. Track the context as if compiling forensic evidence. Each time a strong emotion appears, log 5 essentials: where you were, who was present, what words or events preceded it, the bodily sensations, and the immediate thought that flashed into mind. A single week of this practice reveals clusters. A certain tone of voice, a specific place, or one person will show up more often than chance would allow. Identifying the recurring pattern turns vague vulnerability into a concrete target for change. Look deeper at the thought that ignited the feeling. Often the mental line that leads to emotion is a short, automatic sentence. I am being disrespected. I always fail. They don't care. These automatic conclusions are not facts. They are interpretations shaped by memory and habit. Challenge the thought by asking 3 brief questions. What evidence supports this thought right now? What evidence contradicts it? What alternative explanation would be kinder and truer? This is not sophistry. It is a disciplined reappraisal that weakens the emotional impulse by exposing it to scrutiny. Understand the anatomy of a trigger. Triggers usually contain 3 parts: a current stimulus, a memory that amplifies that stimulus, and a belief that colors the meaning. The current stimulus might be a terse email, the memory may be childhood criticism, and the belief could be I am not enough. When these 3 converge, the emotional response becomes disproportionate to the present moment. Separating the present stimulus from the past memory
Let's see how deep you
reduces
can
the
go back.
weight of the reaction. Ask, which piece is present now and which belongs to a prior time? When the memory is responsible for most of the charge, treat the present event as teachable, not threatening. Use a simple reconstruction method after a trigger has passed. Sit quietly and reconstruct the chain of events in short sentences. What occurred, what I felt physically, the first thought I had, and what I did next. Keep each sentence lean and factual. The goal is not to ruminate, but to clarify the link between input, interpretation, and output. Over time, this reconstruction reveals habitual sequences that can be interrupted. Design tactical interventions for the most frequent triggers. If criticism from a manager repeatedly produces shame that spirals into withdrawal, prepare a 2-step defensive routine. First, slow the immediate physiological escalation with a timed pause. Count slowly from 1 to 8 while breathing evenly. Second, convert a defensive impulse into a curiosity-driven question. Can you help me understand what you mean by that? The pause blunts adrenaline. The question shifts the interaction from combat to information gathering. Rehearse these actions aloud until they feel natural. Notice the role of unmet needs behind triggers. Emotions often signal a basic requirement, seeking fulfillment. respect, safety, belonging, competence. Identify which need is most active for a recurring trigger. If impatience surfaces around family dinners, the unmet need might be connection or a desire for being heard. Planning an explicit small action to meet that need, reserving 15 uninterrupted minutes to talk with a partner or asking for a brief check-in before a difficult topic, gives the nervous system permission to relax over time. Language can either sharpen awareness or fuel drama. Replace sweeping absolutes with precise descriptions. Instead of "they're always disrespectful," try "I felt dismissed when that comment happened." The latter contains less blame and invites resolution. Practicing this shift in private speech reduces escalation and makes repair possible when others are involved. Create micro-experiments that test automatic beliefs.
Leave both of them open.
If the thought, "if I show weakness, I will be rejected," drives anxiety, try 3 small safe disclosures in different settings: a colleague at work, a friend, a family member. Keep the disclosures brief and controlled. Record outcomes. Most of the time, the feared catastrophe will not occur. These experiments are not grand challenges. They are careful probes that gradually rewrite the nervous system's default assumptions. One practical exercise to perform daily is the trigger mapping practice. Each evening, answer 4 questions in 1 to 2 sentences each. What emotional spike occurred today? Where did it happen? And who was involved? What first thought came to mind? What single, small behavior could I commit to next time this appears? Doing this for a month solidifies pattern recognition and produces realistic, specific plans rather than vague resolutions. The habit of nightly mapping short-circuits surprises by making tomorrow's responses prepared instead of improvised. A real-life example shows how mapping and a small rehearsal change outcomes. A project leader repeatedly felt furious when a teammate questioned timelines. The fury felt immediate and righteous. It led to sharp emails and damaged collaboration. Recording each incident revealed a deeper pattern. The leader's father had publicly called him lazy as a child whenever deadlines slipped. The current trigger, the teammate's question, activated that old memory and the belief, "I am incompetent." With that awareness, a tactical plan was developed. Pause for the duration of a single full breath when challenged, then respond with a clarifying question that reframed the exchange as problem-solving rather than personal judgment. In the first meeting after applying the practice, the leader caught the breath, asked for specifics, and discovered the teammate had information about resource constraints that required adjustment, not punishment. The relationship shifted, productivity improved, and the leader's internal alarmed voice quieted with each successful encounter. Boundaries are a crucial complement to trigger work. Not every emotional storm requires endurance. Some triggers arise because current behavior violates core standards. When a repeated source of stress is identifiable and controllable, set a clear boundary. State it plainly and calmly. What behavior is unacceptable, what consequence will follow, and what will change if the boundary is honored. Boundaries reduce feedstock for triggers by aligning the external world with internal values. Resourcing the nervous system is part of the equation. Chronic sleep debt, poor nutrition, and constant stimulation lower resilience and increase sensitivity to triggers. Improving basic rhythms, consistent sleep hours, a short walk midday, and reducing evening screen time raises the threshold for reactivity. Practical effort on body habits is not indulgence. It is preventative maintenance for emotional clarity. Be patient with this work. Patterns rooted in childhood or long habits resist quick correction. Progress is measured in increasing intervals between triggers and the growing facility to respond intentionally. Keep a simple record of progress. A weekly note on one instance where a prepared response succeeded and one insight learned. Over months, this record becomes proof that the new architecture is functioning. Finally, practice a small daily phrase that reorients attention, a short, silent sentence such as observe, breathe, choose. Repeat it twice when encountering tension. The phrase is a compact protocol that interrupts automatic escalation and refocuses the mind on agency. It is not a magic incantation. It functions like a switch that channels attention toward deliberate steps. Mastering triggers is the labor of a craftsman. It requires curiosity, steady attention, and small designed experiments rather than dramatic overhaul. When vulnerability is met with method rather than shame, a person learns that emotional storms are manageable and that the inner weather can be navigated with increasing skill. Over time, living with this attention produces quieter reactions, better relationships, and a daily life shaped more by intention than by impulse. Chapter 3. The Science Behind Emotions and Human Behavior. Human behavior is not random, and emotions are not accidents. They are finely tuned signals wired into the brain and body through thousands of years of survival. Understanding the science behind emotions does not strip them of their mystery. It gives us a framework to see why we act, why we react, and why control is possible when knowledge becomes practice. At the center of this system is the brain, where older survival structures meet the more modern reasoning centers. The amygdala, small but powerful, scans for threats and opportunities every second, deciding in milliseconds whether something deserves fear, anger, or joy. It reacts first, long before the logical part of the brain has a chance to weigh in. This is why people sometimes say words they regret, slam doors, or freeze in panic. They acted under the amygdala's command before reason entered the room. The prefrontal cortex, sitting behind the forehead, is slower but wiser. It interprets context, considers consequences, and applies judgment. Emotional mastery grows when the prefrontal cortex is trained to regain control after the amygdala fires. Chemicals carry this conversation across the body. When a threat is detected, adrenaline surges, the heart races, pupils widen, and muscles prime for fight or flight. Cortisol, the stress hormone, floods the bloodstream, preparing energy for quick action. On the other side, oxytocin fosters bonding and trust, while dopamine rewards us for seeking and achieving goals. These chemicals are neither good nor bad. They are tools. Trouble comes when the same circuits designed for escaping predators are triggered by traffic jams, critical emails, or financial worries. The brain cannot always tell the difference between real danger and social discomfort, so it reacts with the same intensity. Emotional control begins with noticing when the body is in survival mode, even though the situation does not require it. Behavior is the outward reflection of this hidden process. A harsh tone, a sudden silence, or a reckless choice often has little to do with the current moment, and everything to do with how the brain has been trained over years of repeated reactions. Neural pathways strengthen every time they are used. If anger has been the default response to frustration for 10 years, the neural highway for anger is wide and fast. The path for patience is narrow and overgrown. Fortunately, the brain is plastic. Repeatedly choosing a calmer response gradually builds a stronger network for self-control, just as practicing an instrument strengthens the relevant circuits. Consistency rewires behavior. One practical practice to strengthen this system is the body-brain reset. Whenever an intense feeling rises, deliberately slow down the nervous system to give the prefrontal cortex time to act. The reset involves 3 deliberate steps. First, take 2 deep breaths longer on the exhale than the inhale to signal safety to the body. Second, relax one muscle group deliberately, such as dropping the shoulders or unclenching the jaw. Third, ask a grounding question. Is this situation life-threatening or life-challenging? This sequence interrupts the automatic cascade of stress chemistry and gives the brain a chance to reinterpret the situation. Practicing this daily, even in mild stress, strengthens the link between awareness and control. A real-life example shows how science translates into practice. A young professional named Sam dreaded public speaking. Every presentation triggered racing thoughts, sweaty palms, and a trembling voice. The amygdala had learned to associate speaking with danger, flooding Sam with adrenaline as if survival depended on escaping the room. Instead of avoiding presentations, Sam began applying a scientific approach. Before each speech, Sam used the body-brain reset, slow breathing, relaxed shoulders, and the grounding question. This calmed the physical storm enough for the prefrontal cortex to engage. Sam also rehearsed with gradual exposure, starting with small groups and building toward larger audiences. Over time, the brain rewired. Presentations no longer triggered full survival mode. Instead, they triggered focus and energy. Sam did not eliminate nervousness, but by working with the biology instead of against it, he transformed fear into controlled performance. Emotions also serve a social purpose. Humans are wired to connect, and emotions are signals for communication. A smile, a raised eyebrow, or a sigh is not just personal experience. It is information shared with others. Mirror neurons in the brain fire when we observe someone else's feelings, allowing us to sense and reflect their state. This explains why tension in a room spreads quickly, or why laughter becomes contagious. Knowing this gives power. By stabilizing one's own emotions, it is possible to influence the emotions of those nearby. A calm presence can de-escalate conflict. An enthusiastic tone can energize a team. Mastery of personal emotions extends beyond self. It shapes collective behavior. Another key insight is that memory and emotion are inseparable. Experiences marked by strong feelings are stored more vividly in the brain. This is why people remember where they were during significant events, or why childhood embarrassments can resurface decades later. The hippocampus, which organizes memory, works closely with the amygdala to prioritize emotionally charged events. This connection explains why some triggers feel overwhelming. The brain retrieves not only the memory, but the original emotional intensity. Recognizing this link helps us understand that present reactions are often echoes of the past. The practice of reframing and reinterpretation rewires those associations so that memories lose their sting over time. Understanding the science does not mean detaching from feeling, but integrating knowledge with experience. Anger, sadness,
Order filled.
joy, fear, all are rooted in biology designed to keep us alive and connected. The challenge of mastery is not to silence them, but to direct them. Anger can signal injustice and fuel action for change. Fear can warn of real danger. Joy rewards meaningful progress. Sadness encourages reflection and empathy. Each emotion has value when handled with clarity instead of impulsivity. Knowledge of the systems beneath them gives space for choice. Daily routines can train this system just as surely as physical exercise trains muscles. Short, mindfulness practices reduce amygdala activity over time. Journaling increases activation in the prefrontal cortex by turning vague feelings into structured words. Physical exercise burns off excess cortisol and balances dopamine. Sleep restores the brain's regulation systems. These are not abstract suggestions, but biological necessities for stable emotional health. People who neglect them often find themselves at the mercy of their chemistry rather than in command of it. The science of emotion shows that mastery is possible because the brain and body are malleable. What feels
I can just blow
overwhelming
past
today
5
can
a.m.
become manageable with deliberate practice. What feels like instinct can become choice. Awareness of the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and the chemical messengers inside gives us the ability to pause, reinterpret,
Mine
and
at
act
the
with
zero
intention.
on the lower
Each
quadrant of
time we
the
interrupt an old pathway and choose a better one,
yeah.
we are literally reshaping the brain. That is the promise hidden inside the science. Change is not only psychological, but physical, etched into the very circuits of the nervous system. Emotions will never vanish, nor should they. They are part of being human, signals of meaning, value, and connection. The real question is whether we will be servants to those signals or stewards of them. By understanding how they are formed, how they move through the body, and how they influence behavior, we reclaim authority. One breath, one reframed thought, one deliberate action at a time, we transform raw chemistry into directed power. That is where science becomes freedom and knowledge becomes mastery. Chapter 4: Breaking Negative Emotional Patterns for Freedom. Freedom is not only about external circumstances, it begins inside, with the ability to break cycles that keep repeating. Negative emotional patterns act like invisible chains. They appear as the sudden urge to snap when criticized, the reflex to withdraw when conflict arises, or the habit of drowning stress in distraction. These patterns are not chosen in the moment. They are rehearsed over time, etched into the nervous system until they run automatically. Breaking them requires more than mere power. It requires awareness, replacement, and steady repetition of healthier responses until the old paths lose strength and the new ones become natural. The first step in dismantling any pattern is to recognize its sequence. Every habit of feeling and reaction follows a predictable loop. A trigger sets off an emotion, the emotion sparks a thought, the thought pushes behavior, and the behavior reinforces the cycle. Identifying the loop exposes the machinery. Consider someone who feels worthless when a mistake is noticed. The trigger is the correction, the emotion is shame, the thought is I'm not good enough, and the behavior is avoidance. Left unchecked, this cycle deepens over years until small comments feel unbearable. But once the loop is mapped, it becomes possible
Order
to
filled.
interrupt it at several points. Interruption is the key. A negative cycle cannot survive if one link in the chain is broken. Sometimes the break begins at the thought level. Instead of silently repeating, "I always fail," replace it with a question such as, "What can I learn here?" Questions redirect the brain from judgment to problem solving, weakening the emotional surge. At other times, interruption begins at the physical level. When anger tightens the fists, deliberately loosening them and lowering the shoulders signals the body to stand down. The nervous system listens to posture and breath as much as it does to thought. Replacement is more powerful than resistance. Trying not to feel something often intensifies it. The mind rebels against commands to stop worrying or don't be angry. A better approach is substitution, choosing a healthier response that occupies the space where the old one lived. For instance, instead of storming out during conflict, commit to repeating a single grounding sentence such as, "I will respond after I understand." This replacement does not deny the anger, but channels it into a form that supports clarity rather than destruction. Each repetition strengthens the alternative pathway until it becomes more accessible than the old reaction. A practice that proves effective in breaking patterns is called the rewrite drill. Each evening, take 5 minutes to review one moment during the day when a negative pattern showed itself. Write down the trigger, the feeling, and the action taken. Then rewrite the moment in detail, describing what a better response could have looked like. For example, instead of shouting during a disagreement, write, "I noticed my frustration building, so I paused, breathed twice and said, 'Give me a moment to gather my thoughts.'" This rehearsal trains the brain to imagine new behaviors, making them easier to access in real situations. Over weeks, the repeated rewriting builds familiarity with healthier responses until they become automatic. Consider a real example of transformation through this method. A woman named Alina struggled with explosive anger whenever her teenage son ignored her instructions. The cycle was predictable. His intent triggered her frustration, which quickly escalated to yelling, which then led to guilt and tension in their relationship. Through the rewrite drill, Alina began mapping these episodes nightly. She noticed that her anger always peaked within the first 10 seconds of being ignored. With this awareness, she introduced a new plan. When her son failed to respond, she would count slowly to 10 before speaking again. During those 10 seconds, she practiced unclenching her fists and softening her tone. The first attempts were clumsy, but gradually the yelling stopped. Conversations became calmer, and the bond with her son grew stronger. By breaking one link in the loop, the immediate outburst, she dismantled the entire chain of guilt and regret. Breaking negative patterns also demands forgiveness toward oneself. Shame is itself a pattern, one that keeps people locked in repetition. When a slip occurs, the mind often piles criticism on top of the mistake, creating a double burden. To counter this, adopt a principle of rapid recovery. Acknowledge the slip, identify the lesson, and act differently at the next opportunity. Dwelling on failure only feeds the old cycle. Freedom grows not from perfection, but from the speed of recovery. Environment plays a decisive role in emotional patterns. Surroundings can either fuel destructive habits or support healthier ones. If a specific setting consistently provokes negative responses, adjust it. A person trying to manage impatience may find that scrolling through negative news each morning primes frustration for the rest of the day. Changing the environment by removing that stimulus is not weakness, it is strategy. Similarly, associating with people who model calmness strengthens personal discipline, while constant exposure to drama magnifies reactivity. Shaping the environment is a powerful way to weaken old triggers. Breaking cycles requires both short-term tools and long-term vision. The tools provide immediate relief. The vision sustains the effort when old habits try to return. Envision the version of yourself who no longer reacts in destructive ways. Picture how relationships improve, how opportunity expand, and how inner peace deepens. This vision acts as a compass, reminding you why the work matters when discipline feels heavy. Each interruption of a negative pattern is not just an isolated victory, it is a step toward that vision becoming reality. Consistency is the quiet force behind change. No single moment ends a pattern, it is the steady repetition of small choices that reshapes the inner landscape. The first attempt may feel forced, the second awkward, the third slightly easier. By the 10th attempt, the new behavior begins to feel natural, and by the 100th, it becomes who you are. The brain rewires gradually, and persistence ensures the rewiring holds. Patience with the process is as important as intensity in the practice. Negative emotional patterns may feel like unbreakable chains, but they are only loops built through repetition. Awareness exposes them, interruption weakens them, replacement overrides them, and consistency erases their grip. Real freedom is not the absence of emotion, but the ability to choose responses that align with values rather than impulses. The practice of rewriting moments, the discipline of forgiving slips, and the courage to shape environments provide practical tools for this freedom. With each small victory, life becomes less dictated by reflex and more guided by intention. That is how breaking negative emotional patterns opens the door to a life of strength, clarity, and peace. Chapter 5. The Art of Calm Emotional Detachment. Calm emotional detachment is not about becoming cold, indifferent, or heartless. It is about cultivating the ability to stay centered while the storm of emotions swirls around you. Imagine standing in the middle of a crowded street where arguments erupt, tensions rise, and chaos